Just as a unusual reaction video from this morning's hearing of the Undercover Policing Inquiry, Tranche 2, Phase 1. Today was day 12. We've been listening to the live evidence of HN56, who used the cover name Alan Nicholson, but went by Nick. This wasn't the identity of a dead child. Apparently, this was like the beginning of them not doing that because it took too long. I'm joined with Eveline Lubbers from the Undercover Research Group. What do you think of this morning's session hearing thing?
Well, it wasn't boring. Although, yeah. Yeah, it was totally different. We thought specifically because this was one of the only undercovers we would hear that was going into the far right. We hardly got to the stage where he really worked because, there were various breaks and there was a breach again because apparently, and we still don't know exactly what, but it was like something was said about the tactics they used to go into the far right. So it's a bit difficult to repeat the exciting bit because we like when there is a breach, the transcript gets cut and the video as well, so you can't exactly see what you can't say.
Just quickly on that, I've got a whole bunch of tweets I didn't send out from the 10-minute period when they stopped the broadcast. I need to check those against the transcript, and I will put them out later. But there's nothing particularly earth-shattering in them, to be honest. I just want to make sure that I don't end up getting in contempt.
Yeah, so the most important thing that we know about him is that he when he was asked to get to the SDS, he was never told that he was going to be on the far right. Although we've seen several sort of internal paperwork, including from MI5, that they specifically thought that he was, or they thought he was specifically good to do this.
I mean, the reason for that being is he guessed was that he had big muscles and had a black belt in karate. I'll just say that, I mean, he might still have the black belt in karate, but the big muscles are fucked off. He's got a big old fat belly on there now, haven't you? Nick. It's blatantly his name's Nick as well, because he said at one point that, yeah, but it's blatantly his name's Nick. I mean, like all of them, their first names, the name they went by, especially if their name isn't the first name of the dead child they stole, it's always their first name, right? But this guy, Nick.
Yeah, because of course you do that because, like you use your first name most, and if you use a different one, it's a risk that you're going to be found out because you don't react if you're being called by a false name from the other side of the room. He quickly found out that the group he was supposed to infiltrate was barely existing. They didn't have meetings. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't, make plans to go on a meeting, and also they never planned any violence. Of course, anything that would happen was the violence was put upon them.
I mean, he spoke quite well about the way in which, like, I mean, you got the impression. So, whereas the far left have lots of meetings, discussions, there's plenty of like content for the undercover cops to like report on. They can go along to things. I mean, a lot of the things we've heard the reporting about from other officers have sounded really like mundane stuff that they're reporting on, but that there was content. Whereas for poor old Nick, he was catching up with the BMP. He was just going to the pub and having a bit of a chat. So when he came to his feedback, he was like, "I got nothing to report," and he's like, "Well, why not?" And he's like, "Well, there's nothing happening." And it's that thing, isn't it, of like a lot of the other officers were like, oh, they were good. They were doing lots of reports. They were doing the most reports in some cases. I can't remember who said he did the most reports. But his reports were fucking mundane as fuck. There's nothing in them. There's just like, I was at a meeting, these people spoke, all these people were there, that's it. So not having that formality of like the regular meetings meant that poor old Nick wasn't able to put in as many reports as other officers.
Well, it does bring up the question why he was put in that group. He kind of brought up that, or it was put to him that apparently the SDS or MI5 was not well informed about which group was the most important one, or which one was most worth of infiltrating. So I think we will hear this afternoon that his deployment was rather short, partly because of this reason, because there's really nothing to report about. And it is. It is important that they, although it was said that they needed continued coverage of the extreme right, which implies that they had more the infiltrations before. They had it completely wrong as to which group he had to go into, so they weren't sort of up to date with like in around that time. What was it, 89, 90? The extreme right was not non-existent, but quite. But this group was.
Yeah, and I mean it was a particular one. Somewhere in North London, wasn't it? Well, on the outskirts, Loughton. I can't bloody remember now. But I mean, in the internal documents, there's talk of sending him somewhere in East London, Chingford, which he'd never heard of, which was quite amusing. But yeah, there was this constant sort of suggestion that he claimed he knew nothing of this. The internal documents talking about where he was going to be deployed, he had no involvement. Unlike some of the other officers who say they directed where they ended up, he said he had no direction whatsoever. He had no input whatsoever. He was just directed where he was to be deployed.
Yeah, and also one of the things from what we learned from the internal documents was that it went quite high up, that he was going to be deployed there, and he said he knew nothing about that, and he even said that he had never seen his own personal file, which I find quite incredible. And it's worth mentioning that he doesn't. There's a lot that he doesn't remember, and also he takes quite a long time to think about what he's going to answer.
Oh my God, he takes fucking for ages. The long pauses between him being asked a question and the answer means that I don't really believe him. He was very clear that he didn't know anything about any sexual relationships by any of the other undercover officers whatsoever. Not one, not at all, no way. And then he was asked individually about individual officers. And each one, he gave a really long pause before answering, suggesting that maybe he was trying to think what to say because he was lying. Also, he kept tapping the table. I don't know if I don't think the microphone was picking it up, but he was fidgeting like fuck while he was speaking, while he was being questioned. I mean, I was like, oh, is he just not paying attention? But I think he was paying attention. He was just fidgeting.
Yeah, so he claimed that he only heard about undercover officers having relationships, and in the case of Lambert, a child. That he only heard that when he read about it in the papers, and that it was a big shock to him, and that he, like Lambert, Bob Lambert and John Dines being the best, he thought of them as the best undercovers ever, the most professional in the unit. It was such a great disappointment that they did, and he was asked why, and he said, and then he had to think quite a long time. Just so unprofessional, and that was quite weird. Well, the other big thing that some of us picked up was that he was confronted about someone else who apparently has had relationships. HN57. What was his real name again? Yeah, so he said he didn't know anything about it. But the point is that nobody of our side or Police Spite Out of Life, the women, nobody knows anything about allegations about this officer having had multiple relationships, and we have gone back. A bit ashamed that it was in the Counsel to Inquiry opening statement that he was one of the people who was, asked about relationships he had, and he denied it. And also, it was put to the witness yesterday, where we were all so tired because, this is one of the effects of using numbers. There's so many numbers, and it's one moment you're not paying attention and you just miss a revelation. And also it's quite weird of the inquiry to sort of bring a new woman, a new undercover officer with relationships, and makes you wonder, have they investigated? Have they tried to find out who the women were? Have they been approached? So many questions that we have now.
I mean, so we were talking about HN57. He used the cover name John Liscombe, was deployed between 87 and 90, infiltrated Brixton Anti-Poll Tax Group, Brixton Anarchist Community, which was the Sudbourne Road Squat, Brixton Hunt Sabs, Bromley Animal Rights, Croydon Animal Aid, Hither Green Hunt Sabs, Hidcups Hunt Sabs, and South London Animal Aid.
Yeah, so and from what I understand, he was active in the Animal Rights Support Group, which happens to be a group or a similar group to which Andy Coles, Andy Van was involved in. So yeah, this is good. We don't have any statements for him or from him yet. No reports, because he's Trench 2 Phase 2, so bound to be present in the next set of hearings starting late September. But it's quite sort of, well, golden nugget I won't say, but something that someone then specifically picks up and then uncovers, like it all comes out without the inquiry having informed anyone at all.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of other little bits before we go and get our lunch. At one point, he said that the BNP group that he infiltrated were quite a law-abiding bunch of people, to be perfectly honest. He said that. He said in his written statement that the extreme right wing would hold counter demonstrations to any left-wing group whenever they could and try and inflict as much physical harm as possible onto the other side. But then when he actually hung out with the BNP, he didn't find that for that particular group that he was infiltrating. He said that he was asked if there was an expectation he'd be involved in violence or disorder whilst he was deployed. He said he think there was a hope that he might be from a management perspective, but personally that if he took part in violence, if he was asked to take part in violence, he would have gone along but not taken part, just reported on it. He didn't really explain how he would actually manage that. Yeah, there was a lot about his training, and I mean, he pointed out that, like, given most of the other officers were infiltrating the far left, that any information given to him wasn't that useful. Is there anything else you want to add? I really want to go get my lunch.
Yeah, let's go for lunch, because there was another issue about Scott, Stephen Scott.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was more asked about Stephen Scott, who we heard about yesterday. Do you want to just say quickly about that before we go?
Yeah. Also, it was referred to as the Stephen Scott affair. So so when he was asked to join the SDS, there were many rumors about the atmosphere being really bad and undercovers being really unhappy to be in the squad. But it wasn't like really revealed today what it was. It was just that they tried to convince him that was all in the past now, and there was no problem joining. And he, please do join, please don't. So he was convinced to join.
Yeah, there was a thing about how the information would have had to have gone outside of the SDS about Stephen Scott to have more senior managers, and then that would have entered what he referred to as the rumour mill. So the rest of Special Branch were aware, but not the detail, just that there was something up, really. He was a bit unclear on that. I think maybe going through the transcripts we might get a better idea of that. All right, we're going to get our lunch. Thanks for joining us. We'll be live tweeting this afternoon. I'll come back and do another reaction video at the end of the day. Cheers.